Vision Quest video series, a step-by-step guide to holistic health. Today's program will discuss relationships.
Well, my name is Shelley Lesson-Stockwell, and I'm a hypnotherapist, transpersonal hypnotherapist, which means that I'm very interested in all states of consciousness, the subconscious and the conscious and the superconscious, the part of us that knows expanded things like past lives and future lives, and is very intuitive, highly creative. So I'm interested in that as a hypnotist, and I'm also a trance channel, which means that I put myself into an altered state and my guides speak through me.
In this show, we'll explore the intricate nature of relationships. We'll actually attend a weekend relationship workshop and see how independence and interdependence work, the value of communication, how important it is to share values, and you'll see reenactments of strategies that you can use in your own life and in your own relationships.
Well, how I first got involved in this was back in 1982. I had a marriage breakup at the time, and I was in a terrible state. I was suicidal, and for about a month I felt like killing myself. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. No one's worth dying over. And yet I was absolutely just devastated. And then a friend of mine suggested this course in Sydney. So I came to Sydney and tried that course. It was a weekend. And it was a major eye-opener. I got to see how I had set unconscious patterns of belief up and created the situation in my relationship. And it left me with a lot of hope. So I went back to Lismore, where I was living at the time, and I thought I might be able to save my marriage, but unfortunately it was too far gone. And then I decided to come down to Sydney to learn a little bit more about this sort of work, and I ended up becoming the assistant of the woman who was running that particular course, and then became her partner and eventually took the business over. And now it's 13 years later, and we've just developed that work that we did then and just taken it a lot further. So it was something that was absolutely fabulous.
I've always been fascinated with relationships, even when I was a child and then when I was a teenager. In fact, I remember my very first relationship, and I remember my first date, and we went to the movies, the pictures. It was way back then in 1950s, about 58, yes. And relationships have changed, so it was so much different then than in the 1990s. In fact, sitting behind us in the movies that night were both my mother and his mother. And I'm just reflecting now that when my children were that age and had their first date, there's no way that I would have been with them. So I've been fascinated with relationships. I've enjoyed many relationships. I've enjoyed relationships with my children, but the reason why I'm doing this work is because relationships affect every single part of our lives. And I've been studying for the last 15 years and have worked out a few key points that have worked for me, that in general principle, if once I've known about these and put them in relationships, then they work. And if you ask anybody around the world, when I was in Russia, having been recently to Singapore and also Indonesia and America, and everywhere I go, there's two things that everybody in the world wants. And they're simply to be loved and to love. And once we learn the element of how that can be sustained, then we can have significant changes in our relationships. In this video on creating successful relationships, we're taking two distinct elements. First of it is the element that we can work on, the elements of love, purpose and understanding, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The second part is understanding the self, our inner self, our own, what we call our own primal beliefs or thoughts about ourselves, and how we recreate those thoughts time and time again in our life, and how eventually that will affect our relationships. But going back to these elements of love, purpose, and understanding, within each of those elements, there are 3 more elements that if you know and understand, then you can increase your relationship. You can increase the success of your relationship. Within the element of love, we will be looking at truth, joy, and compassion, and how truth can really upgrade and uplift a relationship, and how joy must come into the relationship. Because if you don't have more positive strokes than negative strokes in a relationship, then the relationship itself will be detrimental to your overall being. Then later on in the video, we also move into purpose. Every single relationship has its own purpose. The relationship you have with your butcher, of course, that has a purpose. But people forget to bring real understanding to their relationship with their spouse, and real purpose to their relationship with their children, their partners, their business partners, their workmates. What is the purpose of my relationship? And within purpose, that all depends upon the direction the relationship's going to take, the speed of which it's going to take, and also the commitment of that purpose. And we'll be speaking a lot about commitment later. And then within the 3rd element of understanding, it's yes, I understand relationships, or I understand myself, or I understand my partner, but do you really? And how can that understanding be increased? Within understanding, it's not only communication. Communication is a huge part of understanding. But we've also got what we call reality, shared experiences, and affinity, which is our willingness to understand. So I look forward to going with you on this journey of creating successful relationships.
After having studied relationships for more than 14 years and having been in a number of primary relationships myself, we've discovered that there's certain key elements to a relationship. And if you understand these key elements, you can actually support your relationship to be better and help it to succeed. And those 3 key elements are love, understanding, and purpose.
If any one of these elements is lacking in a relationship, the success of that relationship won't be as high as if it was there. For example, if you had a relationship where there was a lot of love and a lot of purpose but no understanding, what would that look like? Most probably, it could be a marriage where there's a lot of love there. The purpose is to live together, to create a family, to have children. But people aren't relating, they aren't understanding, and there's a lot of arguments and conflict. Or you might have a relationship where there's a lot of love and there might be understanding but no purpose. 2 people have come together, they love each other, they understand each other, but they have no common interests. One's going out to golf and the other one is going to business. And they don't come together with a joint purpose, whatever that purpose is. Or you could have a relationship where there's purpose and understanding, but no love. This often happens in business. And it's often also why businesses fail, because there's no love there. There's no true truth, there's no true joy, and there's no true compassion. So we're going to go into these a little bit fuller later. Let's take purpose in a relationship. What is purpose? Purpose is direction. Purpose is finding exactly why you've come together and where you want to go. The elements of purpose to understand are values. First of all, what are your values in your relationship? What are your partner's values in your relationship? And this can also apply to a business.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How was your day?
Oh, okay. All
Going
right.
okay? How are the kids?
Good, good. They're just playing in the other room now. Came home from school, no problems.
Great. Good.
But a
What's
friend of
on-
mine actually said she wanted some help in the office, and I was thinking about going in. You know, just helping out secretariat for a while.
Well, where's this at? What friend?
Well, Pauline, she's got a couple of children too, and
What, full-time or part-time or?
well, she did say 3 times a week if I wanted, but then the job actually would entail 5 days,
We've got enough money coming in.
yeah, I know, but
It's fine.
well, I just would like to give her a hand. She's offered. She's said, would I like to do it? And I think it'd be good. We'd have extra money and
How are you going to look after Johnny and do the cleaning? What childcare? What's going to happen with that?
I mean, they're at school now, so I mean, I don't have to worry. I mean, I can be home in time to pick them up from school. That's not a problem.
What is-
I
is-
mean,
Is this something that you've been thinking of for a while, is it? Or?
well, they're at school, I've got nothing else to do. I mean, what am I going to do now? I mean, I'm not just going to sit here all day, every day, and I've just got not enough to do. And I mean, this is a good opportunity, and she's a friend of mine, it's not far away.
And then once you work out what are their values and what your values are, what are the joint values from now on of your relationship? It's a very important exercise to do. And then that moves you on to the second point in purpose. And this is direction. Direction and speed. Are you both going in the same direction? Do you both really want to save and buy a home? Or is just one person's dream and another person wants to travel? Find out what your direction is, because it will have a profound influence on your purpose in your relationship.
Look, I'm just not happy about you taking this new job.
Why?
I don't think there's a need for it.
Why
And
is there not a
I'm
need?
concerned about the kids.
There's not a need for
Okay.
you. End of story. Why does everything have to revolve around you? Why does everything have to revolve around you?
Look, I'm just looking at this realistically. What about the cleaning? What about the house? Kids are going to come home. Where's the meal? Where's
What am
it
I,
gonna
a
come from?
housekeeper? Permanent housekeeper. All I do, make meals, look after kids.
Look, I
That's-
just
I've-
don't.
I've won
I just
more
don't
in
feel
my
okay,
life.
Okay, you know?
You don't feel okay. My life does not revolve 100% around you the whole time. What else am I going to do with myself? Can't you see? Wouldn't you be bored if it was the other way around? You wouldn't be able to handle it. Sit there all day. I mean, I can't do enough. There's nothing
Why
to
don't you go and
stimulate
play
me.
tennis? Hang out with your friends? No. I'll give you some more money.
But I want to do something else. I want to do something with myself. Something creative for a change.
Oh, just don't understand you.
Why? I mean, you've got what you want. Your whole life stays exactly the same. You can push on with your career. I have children, everything stops, that's it. So is that forever? I mean, it's not good enough.
You're going to get childcare? Is it
Well,
that
look,
stuff?
what is it? Going to be a couple of hours at the end of the evening.
And the third part about purpose is commitment. Commitment in a relationship. So commitment is extremely important. In fact, for a relationship to be truly successful, it needs to have commitment. And so when you're thinking of commitment, think about this. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would otherwise never have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, rising in one's favour all manner of unforeseen incidences and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. This was applicable for W.H. Murray from the Scottish Himalayan expedition. And just as it worked for him, that's how it will work for you in a relationship. Now with commitment, it is very, very important to have a timeline with commitment. Once a person commits to a relationship and actually says so to another person, the whole level of that relationship can jump to a new understanding, trust-wise. You can trust that you can be yourself in a relationship where there's commitment, and that you'll be accepted for yourself in a relationship where there's commitment. So it takes a huge pressure off each other to keep performing once there is commitment. And the way I like to frame it is that we're all looking for love. And just as if we were in the desert and we're looking for water, what would we dig? Would we dig one hole 100 meters deep? Or would we dig 100 holes, 1 meter deep? My understanding is we'd be closer to water with one hole 100 meter deep. Exactly as we're closer to love when it's one hole, with intensity, with compassion, with direction, with values, with understanding, and with communication. So when you're thinking about commitment, first of all, put a time on commitment. It might only be 1 month commitment. I'll be in relationship with you for a month. If that works, reevaluate it after that. It might be 3 months next. It might be a year. And then work it from there. Because with commitment comes trust and comes that okayness to be myself within a relationship. So from my work with many, many clients, I understand that for some people, commitment is a big problem. And what I say to them is simply this. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas, your dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To live is to risk dying. To hope is to risk failure. But risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, and is nothing. They may avoid suffering and sorrow, but they cannot learn, feel, grow, change, love, and live. Chained by their certitudes, they are a slave. They have forfeited their freedom. Only a person who risks is free. And for those people who have difficulty with commitment, take it a step at a time. Commit for a month, then 2 months, then 3, and take it from there. So just looking at the purpose in a relationship, You need values that are joint and agreed upon. You need to be travelling in the same direction and understand that. And you need commitment. Once you have those three elements, the purpose of your relationship, which I believe is an excellent idea to write out. The purpose of our relationship is to, with as much detail, to bring it right out into the open about that. So good luck with that. Write it out, put it up. Help each other keep to the purpose. If it needs to change, review it. Review it in a month, 2 months, a year.
So one of the basic principles that we talk about in this course is the idea that I'm responsible for my reality. And the purpose behind talking about that particular principle is that until I accept responsibility, I really can't empower myself to change anything. Because if I believe that the circumstances of my life are to do with things outside of my control, they're not to do with me, but they're to do with other people or situations, then really nothing's going to change in my life until those outside circumstances change. And one of the principles that we believe in is that I have the ability to influence my life, I have the ability to have my life go in the way that I want it, and that I am responsible for the circumstances of my life. And so responsibility is a very important factor. Say, for instance, someone says that I can't get a job because the economy is bad. Then what they're doing is they're really just waiting for the economy to change before they can get a job. And so they only have two choices. Either one, they learn to live on a lower budget and just accept the fact that they're unemployed and there's nothing they can do about it. Or two, they may decide to leave and go somewhere else where maybe jobs are better. But as far as they're concerned, their ability to change the circumstances doesn't exist. But in my philosophy, I believe I do have the ability to change the circumstances, that there is some factor within me that if I come to understand and change, then I can actually change the circumstances of the experience that I'm facing.
Great, Louise. Yeah, I think we'd love to come. That'd be great. Thanks. Bye. Guess what?
What?
Louise has got 2 free tickets to the Museum of Contemporary Art. Oh, that is so hard to get into. We can dress up. You know how mad they dress in the big ball gowns. You can wear whatever you like. It's going to be so fantastic.
Mm.
You want to go?
How much
Saturday
is it?
night? Well, nothing. It's free tickets. We don't
Free
even
tickets.
get free tickets normally. They're about $120 odd each. Do you think it's a good idea?
I don't know. Give me some time to think about it. No, I haven't.
Why?
I haven't
do you
planned
think
what I
about?
wanted
It'd
to
be
do
so
on
much
Saturday.
fun. What are we going to wear? I mean, we just have to dress up into something wonderful.
Yeah,
You can wear a suit or tails, or we can go in a costume of some kind. You know how outrageous they can be. It'll be fantastic. Don't you want to go?
Oh, like, there's things on, you know.
What? We didn't mention anything to me.
Well, yeah, you know, there's just some things on that I want to look at and do.
What?
Oh, they're just, you know, some things on that I want to
Well,
look
on
at.
your room.
What was that?
On your room. Or together, or...
Yeah, well, I'm not sure yet.
But this will be so much fun.
What type of damn ball is it? What?
Well, I gather that she said that, you know, you're just given your free tickets. There's cocktails in the foyer. You can wear whatever you like. You can go right over the top, whatever sorts of outfits you want. She said last year people went in full Edwardian costume. Not everybody, just some people. And then you go into dinner, and it's a fabulous dinner, and then there's entertainment. Somebody will, you know, play instruments and sing. And then it's dancing. We haven't done that for so long. In fact, I don't think we've ever done it. Why don't we do it?
What type of music and dancing is it?
I don't know, probably mixed. Usually they do a bit of ballroom, disco. Probably start out with the ballroom and then end up with disco.
Yeah, well, I don't know. No, we'll just see.
The mechanism by which I create my reality and the mechanism by which I'm responsible is through my thoughts. And what happens is I believe that thought is creative, that what you think in time will come about. And well, most people will say, yes, thought's creative, I accept that in principle, but nothing changes. You know, I may want more money, and yet nothing changes. I want a better relationship, and yet I may not have a better relationship. And so the idea on first sight, thought is creative, may not seem to hold power. But when you start to understand what thoughts are and how thoughts work, you can realize that most people's surface thoughts may not necessarily be what they're thinking below the surface in their unconscious mind. And one of the ways in which I describe the unconscious mind is by thinking of a 100-story building. Now, in that 100-story building, I imagine that the conscious part of the mind, the part of the mind that I'm aware of, is the ground floor. And the unconscious part of the mind is the remaining 99 floors. And it's like that in the mind. It's only a very small proportion of the thought processes and the mind is available to our conscious awareness. The majority of it, some 99% or more, is outside our control. And part of this process is to become a detective to my unconscious mind, to recognize what are those thoughts that sit on the other levels of my unconscious. In the 100-story building analogy, what I say is that the building, each floor in the building is equally as powerful, as important as each other floor. So a thought on the unconscious part of the mind is just as powerful as a thought in the conscious part of the mind. And that each floor in that building has the ability to take in information, to retain it, and also to give it out. So in other words, we have our unconscious mind, it's able to take in new information, to retain old memories, and also to give out responses. And again, you might think, well, how can that be? Shouldn't I just know everything that I'm thinking? Isn't everything that I just think in my mind what's happening? But experience shows us otherwise. An example is, prior to getting married, I would go to parties to meet girls and to have a relationship. And on one particular occasion, I was at a party, and there's this very attractive girl on the other side of the room, and I thought, well, I'd go over there and ask her for a date and maybe see where I went. And normally I think of myself as being reasonably presentable and articulate, and by the time it took me to walk 2 or 3 steps across the room, past all the people in front of me, to finally get to her, I was perspiring, I was nervous, and I started to just stutter, and I lost it. And then she started to talk to me, and she thought, who's this creep? You know, what's going on here? And consequently, she wasn't interested and nothing happened. Yet, what had happened when I first started walking across the room, I felt relatively confident, I felt secure, I felt okay. By the time I got to the other side of the room, I'd lost it. I was nervous, my stomach, I'm perspiring, it just wasn't happening. And yet in my thoughts, all I thought was, how do I get past those other people? I didn't think anything else. I wasn't thinking that I wasn't good enough or she wouldn't want me or anything like that. All I thought was, how do I get past these 2 drunks and get across to this girl and have a chat to her and beat someone else from getting across to her? Yet something else had transpired, because when I actually got there, I was feeling terrible. And it's through my understanding that I've recognized that the feeling that I had was something in my unconscious mind. It was to do with my thoughts about not being wanted, not being presentable, not being good enough. And yet at that time, I didn't think those things consciously, yet they came out unconsciously. And they came out in the symptoms, in my behavior. And by recognizing the behavior, I was able to then look at what were the unconscious thoughts and backtrack. And so this whole process is to become a detective to my unconscious mind. It's working all the time. If I want something to happen in my life, I need to look at the circumstances of my life. I need to look at the reality, what is actually happening, and then see what do I have to change in order for things to change out there. What do I have to change within myself? What thoughts do I have to change in order to change things out there?
Just something that I just don't believe that I can do it, you know. Some people can dance, other people can't. You know, it's not inherent in me.
Yeah, but you are good at so many other things. I really think that you can do this. I mean, what is it about dancing that you don't, or you're worried about?
Well, yeah, just, you know, what will people think, you know, look at me and I just can't, I could never move fluidly. It's not my thing.
Well, I think you can do it. I think you can. I
Really?
believe you can
You really
do
do?
it. Yeah. Well, look how good
Well-
you are at the office. Look how good you are speaking to people. I mean, you seem to move all right otherwise. I believe you can do it.
You really think so?
Yeah, I do. But you've got to believe you can do it.
Hmm.
Can you believe
Maybe
it?
I can do it.
I think you can.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Good.
Let's go.
Great. I think we'll
can
love
do
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can do it. I
And
think.
so
Let's
in
go.
this effort to become a detective for the unconscious mind, there are a number of clues. And the first clue I've already mentioned, and that's looking at the circumstances of my life. I'm looking at what's actually happening, not what is what I'd like to happen. And then in looking at those, I can then backtrack and say, well, if that's happening, then this must be the thought that I have around it. For instance, if I don't have more, if I want more money and I'm not getting more money, it may be the thought that I don't deserve it, or it may be another thought that there's not enough, or I just can't get it for some reason. But if I begin to look at that and change those thoughts, then I can begin to bring more wealth or more things into my life. The other clue is looking at my mother and father. And the reason why mum and dad's so important is because they're the role model. And they were the dominant adult in my childhood who taught me a lot of values and understandings and beliefs and things about life. Some people may not have had a mother and father, they may have been adopted, or they may have had a grandparent or another relative take care of them. So really it's the dominant adult up before the age of 7 in my life, and it's their values and their beliefs that will become my beliefs and my values. And as I become aware of those values and beliefs, I can choose to change them. There are many things that I've learnt from my mother and father that are very valuable and really wonderful, and I wouldn't want to change. But there may be other things that have occurred that really are just limiting thoughts. I don't need to be caught up in scarcity or have conservative values about, dress or behaviour. They just are not appropriate at this time. And so as I begin to see and understand those values, I can change them. Mum and dad, very important. The third clue in understanding the unconscious mind is looking at the circumstances of my life in the first 7 years of life, up to the age of 7. Because up until the age of 7, a child doesn't have discernment and discrimination. It's very much at the effect of the people around it. If someone says, if in authority, if it's mother or dad, father say, this is right, or this is good, or this is how it should be, then the child will accept it unquestioningly. It hasn't learnt to discern or to discriminate. And so up to 7 years of age, children are very open and vulnerable. And the earlier experiences in my life are more significant to my personality than the later experiences. So an experience that happens really early in my life can be very critical to my personality, whereas an experience that happened, say, in my 20s or 30s, will only have a marginal effect on my personality. And the fourth and final clue we look at is the specific event of one's birth. And it follows on from that principle that something that happens earlier is more important in your developing your personality than something that happens later. And with birth, it's the very first time I've come into life as an individual. And I'm separate from my mother, I'm breathing free air, and I'm an individual, I'm out here. Prior to birth, I was in the womb for 9 months, but I was being carried by mum in a very protected environment. It was in the amniotic sac, I'm in liquid, I don't breathe free oxygen, and I'm with my host, with my mother. And so I don't have that sense of being a separate individual. The very first hour of birth is significant to developing the personality. It's said that in the first hour, the neurological connections in the brain haven't totally formed. And in fact, that the brain fully connecting up doesn't occur until some 7 to 10 months after birth. And in particular, the first hour after birth is significant with regard to how the brain kind of wires itself up. And if I'm born in a situation that is quite traumatic or very difficult, then that will have an influence on my life. It will have an influence on the way I look at life. I'll have an influence on how I think about myself. And so what we're looking at is what is the circumstances of birth and how does that take place, and the unconscious mind.
So what does it mean to understand? It means simply that I've not only communicated with somebody, but I can interpret that communication, not only literally, but actually understand what they are saying, and understand from not only my own point of view, but another person's point of view as well. And so for understanding, we've got 3 main elements. And the first, and very importantly, is communication. And communication is simply sending a message and receiving it so that the original concept can be duplicated. Often we send messages and we think people hear us, but when we actually ask, what did you hear me say? Then you'll find, if you actually ask them that, you'll find that they heard differently to how you wanted to send it. So communication is the sending of a message and the original message or idea duplicated. So for this to take place, what we need are some good senders and good receivers.
Well, Sandra rang and she's definitely got somewhere in mind to go. We thought we'd go Japanese.
Where's the Japanese?
In Surrey Hills. I mean,
Look, I'm just trying to read this, okay? I'll be finished in half an hour. This is really important.
you're
I've got to
always
read
reading.
it for work.
Every time I come home, you're in a book. When we have dinner,
Look,
you're in a book.
this is
Then you
no,
watch
no.
TV.
You know about
you're
work.
blocked the whole time.
I've got to read it. Yeah,
What
I've got
about a
it.
balanced life? What about half
Can't we
and half?
just, we'll talk about this in half an hour.
There is never time to talk about this. Never.
Look, we've discussed this before. You know what the importance of this is.
What is it? I mean, it's there every day of the week. Then it's the weekend. Then you're out with the
Look,
boys.
I don't want to talk
I mean, do you
about
talk
this
to
now.
them about everything rather than
we
me?
can deal with Jan later.
It happened to be Sandra.
Go and tell her we're going.
Oh, well, do I really want to go with you? Is that the thing? I mean, do I want to? I mean, we never talk anymore. What do we talk about?
Look, can I just have a couple of
In
minutes?
other words, when you're sending a communication, you need to be articulate. You need to be clear in what you want, how you're expressing it. You need to have it in the same language as the person who's listening, without the jargon. And if you are receiving a message, you need to be what we call being present with somebody, in feeling with them exactly what they need to say. And I had a really good learning with this with my youngest daughter. And she said to me, she said, Mum, listen. When I ask you to listen to me and you start giving me advice, you have not done what I asked. When I ask you to listen to me and you begin to tell me why I shouldn't feel that way, you are trampling on my feelings. When I ask you to listen to me and you feel you have to do something to solve my problems, you have failed me, strange that that may seem. Listen. All that I ask is that you listen, not talk or do, just hear me. Advice is cheap. 50 cents will get you both Dorothy Dix and Dr. Spock in the same newspaper. And I can do for myself. I'm not helpless, maybe discouraged and faltering, but not helpless. When you do something for me that I can do and need to do for myself, you contribute to my fear and weakness. But when you accept as a simple fact that I do feel what I feel, no matter how irrational, then I quit trying to convince you and can get about the business of understanding what's behind this irrational feeling. And when that's clear, the answers are obvious and I don't need advice. So please listen and just hear me. And if you want to talk, wait a minute for your turn and I'll listen to you. So take time with your partners, take time with your children, and just listen. Let them be heard. And this takes practice and takes skill.
Hi.
Time for a few minutes to talk?
Yeah, sure.
Great. We've been invited out to dinner by Sandra. She's got a new boyfriend, so
Great.
she's really keen for us to meet him, and so we can either decide where to go, or she might decide. But I thought, well, maybe we could take her somewhere special. So I mean, you got any ideas?
Japanese.
Be great.
Where we went last weekend.
That was great. I really loved it. Yeah, she'd love that.
Okay, that's great.
Well, why don't we do
I'm
that
dying
then?
to meet a new boyfriend.
Oh yeah, she's really so excited about it.
So the
She
next
says
element
he's wonderful.
in understanding is actually duplicating what you've heard and sending it back. So if you can duplicate that message and say, did I hear you say da-da-da-da, then you'll know that you're closer to understanding. So communication is very, very important. Take time out to do it. Start to practice it as a skill. Sit down opposite each other with no distractions and just listen to each other. And see if you can take just listening without the advice, without the should-haves or could-haves. Another part in the understanding triangle is what we call affinity. Affinity is simply our willingness to be close. Now, you need to know about affinity because if you don't have understanding in your relationship, you need to ask yourself, am I willing to be close? If you're not willing to be close, then settle for the actual understanding that you've got at the moment. If you are willing to be close, then just do something about that. Note it, or if you're not willing to be close, question it. What is it in me that I'm not willing to be close? And I understand perfectly if you've just had an argument with somebody, you're not willing to be close. And those feelings need to be validated. And then when you've moved through those feelings, ask yourself, I want a relationship that's going to be better than this. Therefore, am I willing to be close? Am I willing to let that go now and be close? So check yourself out on that one. The third one that is very, very important in this understanding triangle is reality. Now, reality cannot be separated from the viewer. So you might both go along to a movie together, except one person doesn't speak the same language. So one person has got a different reality from the other person on that movie. Check out whether you've got similar realities. The more things that you do together, the more shared realities you'll have. The similar background that you're coming from, the shared reality you'll have of your childhood experiences. The same with language, customs. What I'm saying here is that it's not impossible to have relationships with people from different backgrounds or different realities. What you need to know is that this will make a difference in understanding. And then compensate for that. Make sure that you make a special effort to have shared realities. So they're the three elements: communication, affinity, and shared reality. And with each of those three elements, if you focus on any one, that will increase your understanding. If you focus on all three, then your understanding will rise. If your understanding in a relationship comes up, then the success of that relationship will come up.
One of the definitions of love that I work with is granting beingness. And that means just accepting someone exactly the way they are. And for love, it's like, when I think of my father, there was a time when I used to get very annoyed with him. And it took quite some time before I could just grant him beingness, accept him just the way he is. He didn't have to be any different. As he is perfectly okay. And so one of the things we talk about is when you love someone, it's being able to grant them beingness, which is like unconditional love. They don't have to be a certain way. Just the way they are is enough. And so when we look at this other aspect of the successful relationships triangle, it's love. And as mentioned earlier, it has three components, and the first one is compassion. And most people, when they think of love, think of just this one. They think, oh, well, it's being sweet and nice and loving and caring. And if you have that, it should be enough. But unfortunately, it's been my experience that love isn't enough in a relationship on its own. The compassionate side of love isn't enough. But it's a very important ingredient. Other things are needed, knowledge and understanding and all these other qualities that we're mentioning as well. But with compassion, what we're looking at is, can I feel for another person? Am I able to empathize and be able, it's not intellectual, it's not an understanding, it's can I feel to the way in which they're feeling? Do I connect at the heart, so to speak? Are we emotionally bonded in some way? I think it's a very important ingredient, and in fact in today's society, most people won't enter into a relationship until they experience that at least once with their partner. But how do I keep this going? How do I keep that empathy? How do I keep that compassion? How do I keep that open-heartedness occurring? And that's a rather complicated, and it's quite involved. There's a number of factors involved. Obviously, one of them is the desire to remain open and connected, and the other one is feeling it for myself, feeling okay about loving myself and being all right with myself. In fact, what I say is that there's never a shortage of love. There's never a shortage of compassion and empathy out there. It's always got to do with the ability to receive it. And if I have the right attitude of mind, I could walk down the street and see a dog dropping, and I could see love in that if it was really the right attitude of mind. The point, it's an extreme example, but the point that I'm making is that love exists, and it's to do with my attitude. It's not to do with the supply or the quantity out there. It's rather to do with me feeling, allowing myself to receive. And so that's the first of the three aspects of the love triangle: the compassion, the ability to be able to receive love, and the granting of beingness, accepting someone just the way they are. And the second one is truth. And I briefly mentioned it before, the story of the three blind men, where each one had a point of view. And each person's point of view is important. Each person's point of view is absolutely necessary. Because if I'm in a relationship and my partner does not express her truth or his truth and bring it to the relationship, then something's going to be missing. It'll lose its richness. And also it can set up a situation in time where one person may feel resentful because they're not able to communicate or express or be who they truly need to be. In my relationship with my wife, I support her to be who she wants to be. I support her to the best of my ability to go for her truth, to go for the experiences that give her the most value and the most meaning. Because in turn, she also supports me to go for my truth, to go for the things that really make sense to me and give meaning to my life. And then why would I want to be with anyone else if I'm with someone who's totally supporting me? Why would I need to be in another relationship? This is the best relationship I could have, because she's treating me in a sense like a king, and I'm, to the best of my ability, treating her like a queen. And it's like we're supporting each other for our own truth. And for that to take place, it requires a certain level of maturity, because I believe that initially people lack self-esteem and find it rather difficult to bring their truth through. Or if they do bring their truth, it becomes competitive, and it feels as though my truth is going to separate your truth, or it's going to negate your truth, and you won't have an opportunity to express who you are if I'm expressing who I am. But my experience with this is, if I go for the highest good and the highest truth as I understand it, it's a win-win for both people. The other person can still have their win and I can have my win. It doesn't mean that we have to lose in this situation. And so the truth is a very important component. I cannot keep it out of the relationship, otherwise I'll feel resentful. And I have to express it and allow my partner to express it, because it adds additional, love. It adds additional richness to the relationship. And the third component, as mentioned before, is joy. And we're looking at how can I put joy, how can I put fun into the relationship? It can't be this heavy-duty thing. It's got to be something that is light. It's something that I enjoy going to, being in, being involved with. It can't be something that it's continually I'm having to work at, and it's hard, and it's difficult, and it's struggle, and there's something not working. Where's the fun? Where's the ease? I think of if I have a cold and I need to take vitamin C, I can take vitamin C by taking ascorbic acid, which is a very different powder. Like the water, drinking something quite different, and I'll say to myself, well, this is good for me, but I only do it when I have a cold, and only in great desperation and need, but I would not normally take it. Whereas it's far better for me to take that vitamin C with a beautiful juicy orange, and I'm happy to have that orange many times, and I don't need to have a cold for me to take it. And so it's far better that I do something out of a sense of pleasure than out of a sense of duty. And the thing that puts pleasure into my relationships is joy. It's fun. And I'm looking for the fun, I'm looking for the joy, I'm looking for the ease, I'm looking for the lightness. And if I haven't experienced it, then it's something I may have to learn. So you would imagine that having fun and play is the most natural, easy thing in the world, but we get out of the habit. As we get older, we may get more serious, life gets more pressured, and we forget to have fun. And I can remember my father, when he retired, had worked very hard all his life, and at the point of retirement, he just hadn't learned how to have fun. He didn't know how to relax. And now suddenly the switch was thrown, and he had all this time, and he was told, just go and relax, have fun. He didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how to have fun. And I think he never really learned how to have fun either. And then he got ill and went into a nursing home. And it got a little bit better for him because there were a lot of organised activities, but he didn't know how to just enjoy himself. And it was something that has to be learnt if we've unlearned it and lost it from childhood. And it's something that takes an effort and, to some extent, planning. And as I mentioned before, in my relationship on Friday evenings, it's the night I have with my wife. Now, this may not work for everyone, but you need to look at what are the things that can work for you. What are the ways in which you can put more fun into your life? An exercise I would suggest is to look at thinking of 10 things that give you pleasure, and to write them down and just bring them to mind. And it could be going for walks on the beach, going to the movies, going out to dinner, having sex, bushwalking, camping, reading a book. And so you might think, well, what are some of those things that I can do with my partner? How can we do these together? How can we put more fun into the relationship? How can we go and just spend more time being together? And in doing that, the relationship will just become stronger. The people you have fun with are the people you want to stay with. And if you're with someone who allows you to express your truth, and you feel that your inner being is being satisfied in this relationship, then why would you even consider being anywhere else? And if there's empathy and compassion, and there's a sharing and there's a feeling between the two of you, then you've found paradise. And so definitely I would, if I'm looking to increase the love in my relationship, I would be looking at the acceptance of the other person, just accepting them the way they are, and looking and understanding that it's got nothing to do with the supply of love, it's got to do with my ability to receive it, and looking at how can I release any beliefs that I have that I'm not being loved. And this is the section we'll deal with in a little while about negative primal beliefs and the unconscious mind. And then I'm also looking at my truth, understanding what my truth is. Sometimes people say to me they don't even know what their truth is. Well, then it's a matter of discovering it. It's a matter of finding what makes sense to you, what gives meaning to your life, what feels right for you. And no one can really tell you. And it's a matter of understanding and finding it. So it may be your truth at this moment, maybe to find your truth if you don't know what your truth is. What are the things that give you meaning in your life? In other words, when I say truth. And then the third one, as mentioned before, is having fun, making it easy and having a laugh and going away and having holidays, having a weekend, doing lots of things together. So that's love. May there be more love in your life.
Our primal belief is our negative thoughts that we have about ourselves. It is always an I am statement. And it really, the understanding of a primal belief needs, of course, to be understood with what we mentioned before, thought is creative. So a primal belief, one, is always a belief about ourselves. There can be more than one primal belief. It's usually a judgment that we've made about ourselves at a time of stress, either during our birth or any time within those first 7 years. And because the child at that time thinks that the world revolves around them and that they are therefore responsible, they take on these I am beliefs. And some of the common ones are, I am wrong, I am not enough, I'm bad, I am a mistake. Those are some of the common negative core primal beliefs. And that's the fear of who I am. And it's not the truth. It was true in that instant, at that one judgment, and then it got lodged into the unconscious. And because thought is creative, we've proven ourselves right in many circumstances. And that is the fear of who we are, the fear that I'm not enough, that I'm bad, that there's something wrong with me, that I can't do it, that it's not the truth, it was just a judgment. Then around that, our ego personality will create who we think we are. We may become the good sportsman or sportswoman. We may be the creative artist. It's a statement around to defend the core negative beliefs. And that becomes our persona, our view of the world and who we think we are. But we're not that either. Because really who we are truly is beyond who we think we are, beyond who we fear we are. We are truly this magnificent diamond, this diamond of love, of intelligence, of light, of understanding. Just like the purest of pure diamonds in the world, That's the essence of who we are. So, how was your day?
That was great. Great. Yeah, fantastic.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What did you do?
I just went to work, went to lunch, and just a good day, you know.
Who did you go to lunch with?
Just some people from work.
Oh.
Usual crowd.
Yeah, but who?
Oh, you know, Philip and Max and, you know, just all, you know, all the guys.
Oh, I see.
How was your day?
Oh, it was okay. I went to lunch with Sally and in the city, really. And I'm sure I saw you having lunch today.
Did you?
Yeah, I'm sure I did.
Right. At cafe.
Yeah. Yeah, because we just happened to be walking past
You should have dropped in.
at that particular time. Oh, I didn't like to interrupt. Not if it was a business lunch,
Oh.
you know. So what did you talk about?
Oh, just what we did on the weekend, the way things are going in business, and that. There's a kind of a meeting lunch. thing.
Yeah, what happened to Philip and George?
Philip and George. They
You
went.
said you had lunch with Philip and George. I didn't see them.
Philip and George were at lunch with me today. Yeah.
Yeah, but
We all went to lunch.
I didn't see them when I walked past.
Who did you see?
Your secretary.
Ah, yeah. Philip and George were with us earlier. We were all in a group, and they decided to go back, you know, just a little bit earlier. Penny and I hung around and finished our meal. Had a bit of a chat.
What's she like?
Penny, oh, she's great. She's a great girl.
Do you think she's going to be good?
Yeah, I think she'll be great.
She looks good. Do you think she looks good?
Yeah, she's a good-looking young girl. Yeah. Why?
Oh. Well, no reason particularly. I just was surprised to see you there.
So how might you say, how can I know my negative beliefs about myself? Well, there's a very simple exercise to do. Just start out with writing down a negative thought I have about myself is. Another negative thought I have about myself is. Another one is. And what we'll find that there'll be secondary thoughts. It might be that I'm too fat, or that my eyes aren't right, or I'm wrinkled, or I'm not bright enough. But they will be what we call secondary thoughts. Then underneath that, ask yourself the question, I believe this because I truly believe I am. Whatever comes out first will be what your core negative belief is. And so once you know that, it might bring a little bit of emotion up because it's not the truth, but you bought the story a long, long time ago. Once you know that, then we can reverse it. We've brought it into consciousness. Oh, right, okay, I don't have to believe that anymore. I don't have to act that out. And one of the ways that we often turn it around is by positive affirmations. I am enough. I'm perfect as I am. My actions in the past mightn't have been correct actions, but I truly am perfect as I am. And I can educate myself. I can change my actions. I can improve myself. I'm not saying that we don't need to do that, but our true essence is okay no matter what. So play with that one and develop it further, because that will have a profound effect on every relationship that you have. Because of course, you can imagine if you unconsciously have a thought that I'm not okay, that's what you're going to project out to your partner.
Look, just because it happened in your family, it doesn't mean it's going to happen here, you know. In my family, my father stayed with my mother all of his life. And
just jumping to conclusions, because my father did do that to my mother, I just saw you in there, and I think the worst part was the fact that you didn't say straight out, I'm going to lunch with my secretary.
Mm.
And when you said about those other people, I didn't even see those other people. I didn't even mean to be there. It just happened, and I just thought it's just something that I thought immediately. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have thought that.
It's okay. No, it's not going to happen.
I know.
Someone recently said to me, Denise, I make my decision from my past experiences. And I said, well, if that's the case, don't forget that your past experiences are tied in with your core negative beliefs that you believed about yourself then. And remember that reality cannot be viewed without the viewer. The viewer is part of reality. So why base your future decisions on your past experiences? It's a very important concept to know this primal belief, because it is part of you until it comes into consciousness, until you come into understanding. It is part of you. It is part of the way you think, feel. It's what you attract into your life to help prove yourself right. So any past experiences you've had will be tied up with that core belief. As soon as you change that core belief, you can change your experiences about yourself forever, because thought is creative. So first of all, find out your primal beliefs about yourself. Remember, it is an I am statement about yourself. Then change them around to positive affirmations. Say them out loud to yourself 10, 20 times a day. Write them up. Put them on your notice board. Put them around your house. Listen to them on your video. Listen to them on your audio cassette. Say it in your own voice. Listen to it in the car as you drive along. I am okay. I am perfect as I am. I can do it. Of course, most of you have heard of wonderful, wonderful motivational speakers and authors, such as Wayne Dyer. And what they're attempting to help us with is to turn around this core negative belief, because it's only a story we bought when we were born, or our first 7 years, and it's not the truth. And we don't have to be an incredible athlete or incredible brain surgeon or anything else to be okay. We are okay exactly as we are, and we can choose to develop our talents any way we want.
So in conclusion, in order to achieve a successful relationship, some of the principles that are important are to understand that it's necessary to work on the love issue, to look at love, to look at understanding, and to look also at purpose and how those three things interact. Also in order to be able to put those into practice and for them to actually work in your relationship, it's also important to look at the mind and the unconscious thoughts and the patterns of belief that exist. And what we're looking at here is the idea of primal belief. What's my basic negative belief pattern? Because that'll come up in my relationship. And also recognizing that it's important for me to accept responsibility, that the relationship that I'm presently experiencing is due to the circumstances of my life, and it's due to something that I'm doing and something that's happening inside of me. Sure, my partner may have issues, but it's also, why have I attracted into my life someone like that? Why have I attracted someone who is that partner into my life? So these are some of the important keys in a successful relationship.
The dynamics of relationships, the types of relationships that you can have. What happens when you want to complete a relationship? What happens when somebody dies? There are 5 distinct stages in completing a relationship. One of the most controversial topics in a relationship is money. Let's look at that this time. How to negotiate about the important things in a relationship. There are definite skills in negotiation. We're also going to show you the importance of understanding sex in the relationship, the importance of creating your future, the importance of emotions in a relationship.